All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Sky's the Limit podcast. I am your host, Mike Doherty, and today we have an awesome guest. We have Joe Downs, who is the CEO and co-founder of Belrose Storage Group and the founder of Storage Moguls, an AI-native self-storage investment education platform right out of Philly, Pennsylvania. Joe has built and operates a $50 million plus portfolio across six distinct verticals: self-storage, boats, RVs, indoor, outdoor storage, small bay flex, PRO storage, and vehicle parking. We haven't had many self-storage guests on the podcast, so I'm really excited to have Joe, tell us how he got started in self-storage, where he's going, the future of self-storage, the market of self-storage, and all that comes in between. So with that, Joe, welcome. Thank you for coming on the show.
Michael, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Love talking storage. What do you got?
Yeah, let's get into it. We were just, for all the listeners out there, Joe and I were catching up beforehand, and we were talking about how, I've dabbled in a lot of stuff: multifamily, commercial, office, triple net lease, retail, residential, Airbnbs. I've done it all, but I've never done self-storage. So selfishly, I'm really curious about how it works. I love, 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 love the idea of not having to deal with the number one is evictions, right? Here in Connecticut, Pennsylvania is no different. Don't have the best landlord-friendly laws like some of our southern states do. So, I just had to go through an eviction 2 weeks ago, I was telling Joe, and it took a solid 3 months. And so I'll let Joe get into some of the favorable landlord-tenant laws as it relates to self-storage. We'll get into what's working, what's not working. So, I've got a lot to unpack today. With that, Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in real estate investing and specifically self-storage?
Yeah, but can I comment on your 3-month eviction? That's nothing. That's fast. Yeah. Most places you're looking at a year.
Yeah, so Connecticut, it's okay if you have a very savvy. I'll say I've had longer. If you have a very savvy tenant who is actually showing up at court and going through all the hoops and jumps, and they're putting a lot of effort into staying at your property rent free, I might add, it does take longer. But in this particular case, I had a pretty strong case, and she was just
good.
ready to.
And it's easy for them to be savvy today because there's so much information out there. Yes, it's all free. Yes, so if you want to find out how to live for free in someone else's property, you can. And the laws, the whole system sets you up to have success that way, which is not great for us as landlords. And like you, I have a very diverse background in the financial world as well as real estate. I've spent a lot of time doing 1031 exchanges, raised a lot of money. This is years ago. I worked for a company, raised $93 million for 1031 exchanges, 4 multifamily properties, 4 office buildings, 4 hotels, for a platinum LEED certified development office building, for a distressed debt fund. Didn't know anything about self-storage, literally nothing. By the way, had plenty of bumps and bruises along the way through the different cycles that everybody lives through. The 2008 financial collapse, the COVID, lived through it all. And by the way, that affects real estate in different cycles, but was never in self-storage. And actually, what's funny is I didn't script this, but I'll come back to that statement, how it affects real estate in different cycles. Didn't know anything about self-storage. Got an email. I think because I used to speak at different conferences, because I also have a distressed debt company. We buy a lot of charged-off second mortgages. So I would speak at a lot of different conferences. And so I ended up on somebody's list, these small alternative investment conferences. Whether it was hard money lending or distressed or just real estate conferences. Anyway, I get an email from a guy I don't know. Subject line is real estate without something like no tenants, toilets, or trash, or whatever the headline. Got me to open the email. Was reading the email, so it was a pitchy type of email, but there was one line in the body of it that stopped me in my tracks, and that was 80% of all self-storage facilities are owned by mom and pops. Now, I knew nothing about self-storage, been to a lot of commercial real estate conferences. There was never a self-storage operator. I've never rented a self-storage unit in my life. Still to this day, I've never rented a self-storage unit in my life. But I was, that paused I stopped reading right there, and I was like, that can't be right, because I don't know anything about it, But driving around anecdotally, if you had asked me, this was probably 2016, maybe I got this email, 17, somewhere in there. If you had asked me when I was reading that email, who owns self-storage or what does that industry look like to you? I would have said something like, I don't know, it's those places with a lot of doors, garage looking doors, and they're usually all the same color, orange or green or red, right? I live outside of Philadelphia. You see them all. I'm in a major metro area, even though I don't live in the city, I live outside of it. Still, most of the self-storage facilities I drive by are named Public or Extra Space or Life Storage, which is now Extra Space, or CubeSmart, whose headquarters are 12 minutes down the road from me. So you get the red doors, the orange doors, and the green doors. Life Storage was the yellow doors. And then you got regional players as well. But I don't, that's what I would have described self-storage. And I would have said that was 90% of the business or 80% or something, right? I've certainly have seen non-REIT owned self-storage facilities, but that's not what dominates when you drive around to the untrained eye. So when I read this line that 80% were not owned by them, I was like, whoa. Now I'm coming out of alternative investment world where fragmented, dislocated markets is where you make opportunities, right? It's all about the information, right? If you go back to Freakonomics, the people with the information are the ones that control the markets, right? Well, you're telling me there's 80% of this market is dislocated, is disenfranchised from where the information, I promise you the REITs have great information at the time. Now I know they do. But so you're telling me most of this market is not correlated or connected to the rest of the market. That screamed opportunity to me. Because mom and pops don't, they're just not. I know that from from my history, from owning and selling, buying and selling distressed debt. So I thought, this is interesting. There's something here. And again, I don't know anything about self-storage. And I'm a former, I own single family rentals. I'm not starting to build an Airbnb portfolio yet, but I'm interested in it. So I start to research this. I buy the home study course. And I was immediately hooked. And then they had a traveling academy where you'd go to it for 2 or 3 days, I think 3 days. This is the person who sent me the email, the company, they're no longer doing this, but, and so I went to that academy. But what's funny is I didn't travel to it. I waited for it to come to Philadelphia, having no idea it would come to Philadelphia. So I waited, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years. And I wish I could have that year and a half, 2 years back. And I wish I traveled to the very first opportunity because I set myself back 2 years in self-storage because it's absolutely an incredible business. It was everything that email said and then some. The opportunities galore. And it's not even about the investment opportunity because you can find great investment opportunities in residential still. There's two things that come with it. One, the quality of life that comes with it. Not dealing with the headaches that you and I were talking about before you started recording. As a residential guy, I no longer deal with that. Even my wife and I sold our final remaining single family rental and bought a beach house. And then so there's the quality of life, and then there's the operation of it, right? Going back to the eviction. It takes us 45 days pretty much across the board. I don't care what state you're in. I don't think it's more than 45 days to evict somebody out of a self-storage facility. Are there rules that we have to follow? Sure. They're super simple and easy. It's nothing like evicting any other asset class. And it's done and over with. And it's not like you see on, Storage Wars. We auction them off online. We don't deal with it. It's not a revenue event. Nobody's finding, Babe Ruth's rookie baseball card in there. Is there a treasure story, 1 in 1,000? Sure. It's mostly junk. I hope no one gets into self-storage thinking this is a backdoor to finding treasures. It's not. And by the way, you're not allowed to anyway. You have to put it up for auction. There's process you have to follow, but that's not what it is. That's the glamorous TV show. What they are very boring metal boxes, mostly metal, sometimes drywall, but mostly metal, Very boring cash flowing machines. That's what they are. That don't bother you at night. They don't require a lot of your time. Upfront time, yes. You got to learn the business. It's not hard at all. In fact, we started teaching it. We built our own platform and education platform and community. We just launched it recently. But look, you and I just met. I promise you, I am no Elon Musk. I am just your regular average Joe. Am I an entrepreneur? Yes, I am. Am I, a go-getter? Sure. Do I grind? Yes. But that's all it takes. Those are the qualifications.
Yeah.
That's it.
One thing I guess that comes to mind that's a little different than the residential or traditional commercial world, I'll say, of retail or office, is yourself. So I know within self-storage, there's kind of like laundromats, attended and not attended. I might have botched that verbiage, but are your self-storage facilities, do you pay someone to sit at kind of the front gate, we'll call it, and monitor the in and out and do the bookkeeping for that specific site? Is it more, I'll say, passive in a way where you don't need to hire someone and have someone on a salary or 1099, or is it just kind of come and go? You have a CRM system or a bookkeeping system, a website maybe, where the tenants just kind of log into a portal, pay their bills, and that's it. Or is it a hybrid model? How do you have it set up?
So great question. How do I answer that? What you're asking about is kind of two different things. One, you need no matter what, and that's the management platform and system, whether you have on-site management or remote management, which is kind of the attended or not attended question you asked there. So it depends on the facility. Some facilities absolutely do not require, nor could they support a person physically there at whatever number of hours a day, 8 hours, 5 hours, whatever, however many days a week. So do we own those facilities that are remote managed? You bet. In fact, that's most of them. Storage was headed there was an intersection happening already between technology and self-storage. COVID really accelerated it. It was an accelerant on that relationship between technology and the customer and how they use self-storage. Part of that is the management system and how you can book a unit and pay for the unit. That was already in place, and again, it accelerated. And then there's a kind of a fourth leg to the stool, if that was three, or a third leg if that was two, and that is, who are the tenants? So I told you a few minutes ago, I have never rented a self-storage unit. I'm 52. I'll be 53 in September. I'm Gen X. My generation is not only the smallest generation in the country in terms of population, we're also a little different. We didn't grow up with abundance necessarily. So you don't see a ton of my generation using self-storage. I have an attic, a basement, and a garage. If I need self-storage, this is just me speaking personally. Mm-hmm. I would view myself as a hoarder with a problem. If you're a hoarder listening, we love you. We need you. We appreciate you. There's nothing wrong with you keeping your stuff. It's just not how we grew up. The millennial generation is the boomers are the biggest. The millennial is now the second biggest generation. As the boomers are dying off, the millennials are kind of taking over as the biggest. They do use storage. They use it at 3 times my generation.
Wow.
They want all the stuff we have. They just don't want the big houses, and they're also moving into houses later in life. They're buying houses later in life. So they're actually using storage as part of their way of life. They don't know life without storage, or at least a larger percentage of them don't know life without storage. Kind of like I knew life without a cell phone. I'm looking at you. You look a little younger than me, Michael, so that's a compliment. But you probably don't know life without a cell phone. I do. I know. Yeah. I know adult life without a cell phone. Right now, it was only 20, 21 years old, but I know what it was like to not have one. My kids don't know what life is like without a cell phone, and they also will not know what life is like probably without a storage unit. They will probably rent storage. So on top of the technology meeting the the changing how we manage storage and giving the operators the ability to change how we manage storage and cut our costs. The demand wants the technology too. So if you can still find storage facilities where there's a house on the property, or they literally built it with an apartment upstairs on a second floor, because you didn't just have somebody there, you had somebody living there. That was the old school model. We've gone from that to completely remote managed. We got cameras everywhere, gates we can open from cell phones. I mean, what we teach people to do is to go find those old facilities that are owned and run by mom and pops. And there's most of the industry is this way, right? In fact, Forbes recently put out a stat that said 2.5 million cash flowing businesses will change hands in the next 10 years because of the age of the owner of the business. They're all in their 70s and 80s. That's self-storage. They just described self-storage. 25 to 30,000 of those 2.5 million businesses are self-storage facilities, right? That fit that mold. What we do and teach people how to do is go find that and then take it from, like if we closed on one of those mom and pop run facilities today, within a week, you can find it from your cell phone, rent a unit on your cell phone, pay for that unit on your cell phone. We've added tenant insurance. And by the way, when I say pay for it, I mean required. And it's a credit card or a debit card, which is going to be a monthly auto pay, right? Not hey, hi, Mr. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I didn't get your check for your unit this month. Like, we don't have people calling to the delinquent payments, or we try to limit that. So that used to be everybody, and now it's, less than 10% of the facility isn't on auto pay.
Yeah.
Right? So we're just taking the old, modernizing it with technology, a little bit of physical value add, but it's mostly technology. So for instance, in residential, you buy a value add opportunity for a reason. You want to create value and grow rent. But you're probably going in and putting in new carpet and paint or new hardwood. And if you really have to, you're changing Formica to granite, you're redoing bathrooms. You got a heavy CapEx, right?
Yep.
But the before and after, everyone understands and can see. If you ask me to invest in your project, here's what it looks like before, here's what it'll look like after. I can see what you're doing and it makes sense, right? It's hard to see what we do in self-storage because we're adding cameras and lighting and making sure the gates work properly, or putting in a gate system if there isn't one that can open, or a keypad in the right place, or bollards on corners so you don't damage buildings. What we do is not glamorous. It's not Formica to granite, and it's obvious. To the untrained eye, it's doesn't look like we did much. Right. So we do a little bit of physical, just a little bit, like 15, 20, 25, if it really needs a lot, 50 grand to a call it $1 million facility. But the real value is in the management systems. It's in the, do they have a website? Can they be found on Google? Are the business hours there properly? Google matters. Your Google My Business profile is hugely important to every business, but in particular self-storage. Most of the mom and pops aren't even on it. Or if they are, it's not properly optimized. And by properly optimized, I don't mean you're bringing in, Sergey Brin to optimize it. It's, does your address and phone number match? Do your hours match what you say? Little things like that. So we're taking them from the 1980s. It's just the old school mom and pop management. It's the way they did it. And by the way, I'm not beating them up. They're pioneers. These people they led the way. They had a vision for self-storage where nobody else did, and they built them, or they bought them, and they expanded them, and they grew them, and they built their tenant base, their customer base. They're just not optimizing it. And there's just a ton of opportunity out there to optimize it.
So I've been writing down a bunch of questions because now you got my mind thinking, right? So first question I came up with is, how many units on general do you need to have at one site for an in-person or 9 to 5 person? How many units does it take to make sense to hire one person to manage that one operation?
It's not going to be units as much as it is revenue. And let me give you an extreme example of that. A storage facility on Nantucket might only be 20,000 square feet, which there's no way any of my 20,000 square foot facilities is going to have a person at it. But I'm also getting maybe $1 per square foot at a 20,000 square foot facility in Kentucky. On Nantucket, they're probably getting $4 a square foot, and I probably need to have somebody there to stroke the ego of whoever is dropping off the $50,000, jet ski, right? So, extreme example to make a point. But I do want to answer your question. In general, you're probably in the 50,000 would be the smallest that again,
gross
depending
revenue.
on the revenue. Yeah. Depending on no, not revenue, square feet.
50,000 square feet. Okay.
Yeah. You're probably going to need to be that big to warrant having somebody there. Here's where you're definitely going to have somebody full time. The multi-story climate control, 4-story climate control where they're 100,000 square feet, 80,000 square feet, you're going to have probably 1.5 people there. On the weekends, you're going to have, there's going to be times on the weekend on a Friday, Saturday, where you're going to have 2 people at the same time. Right. And then maybe you have 1 person during the week. That's kind of the normal within the Nantucket's an extreme. The normal range, that's going to be, you're going to have bodies there. 20,000 square feet in, like we have one 20,000, roughly 20,000, maybe a little more in Tallapoosa, Georgia. There's nobody there. We are not going to have somebody there full time or even part time.
Yeah.
What we do need are boots on the ground to go check on things for us once a week or once a month. Sure. And with technology, we can hire those people very easily. We can find them, manage them, et cetera. And then again, we got cameras everywhere. We know what's going on. And motion sensors. So at night, during the day, we know when somebody's there.
What cap rate are you usually entering a deal at?
It really depends. I would say well, let me break this down. There's kind of there's a Mason-Dixon line in this industry. Right. And I'll lower it to 40,000 square feet. Above 40,000 square feet is where it's really competitive from an institutional standpoint. Below 40,000 square feet is where it's not very competitive from an institutional standpoint, and actually where more opportunity is and where more mom and pop own. Right. So when you get into the institutional world, we're talking different markets and different cap rates. We're talking bigger facilities and or major metros. So a facility that's going to be traded outside of Philadelphia, where I am, is probably going to trade. I mean, a couple of years ago, they were in 4 caps, right?
Wow.
Somewhere in the 4s. Today, it's probably 5s to 6s. Tallapoosa, Georgia, we're talking high 7s and 8s. So it's size and market dependent.
Yeah. Totally makes sense.
And also, and when I say market too, like who's the buyer?
Right.
If it's us, and I'm not trying to compete with, there's an old saying, if you want to beat Tiger Woods at something you can, just don't play him in golf. All right. I don't know how he is at everything else, but I know I'm not beating him in golf, even on however many legs he's left. Right. I don't want to play him. Me trying to buy a 75,000 square foot facility in the suburbs of Philadelphia is trying to play Tiger Woods in golf. I'm going to lose. So I want to be competing in secondary, tertiary, rural markets where not only am I not competing with Public and Extra Space and CubeSmart, they can't compete with me there. It's too small.
Yeah.
So now I'm only competing with folks that I'm either educating or other companies like mine who are built for the smaller, more mom and pop scenario, who are more entrepreneurial. And there's just not a lot of us out there.
Right. No, totally makes sense. So 40,000 square feet, above 40,000 square feet is kind of where you get to the institutional players.
It's not a hard number. It's just
Yeah, rough.
35 to 45 range could go either way. Yeah.
Right. Do you prefer climate controlled or not climate controlled?
It doesn't matter to me. There's a case for both. Every market needs some balance of both. The lion's share is non-climate. Drive up non-climate is by far the majority of what you're going to find out there. You will find drive up non-climate with a sprinkling one building that's climate controlled. It's still drive up, or it's single story is a different way to say it. Might not have outside doors. But most of what you'll find out is most of the opportunity is non-climate drive up. So what do I prefer? Whatever gets me the best rate.
But you're not converting.
Whatever that market needs. I don't care.
Yeah, you're not converting. Like the juice isn't worth the squeeze, let's say, to take an existing non-climate controlled facility and make it climate controlled. You're not getting an extra couple bucks per square foot because it's climate controlled, right?
It's typically not, but it's very market dependent. If you find yourself in a market that has one climate control competitor, let's say there's 100,000 square feet in the market, 20,000 square foot facilities, just to make the math simple, and one of them has one building that's 5,000 square feet, and that building is always full, and it's getting $2 a foot, and you're getting $1 a foot everywhere else in the market. Well, you could probably make a case that you might want to consider converting one of your buildings and competing for that climate. Because if it's always 100% full at 5,000 square feet, let's say in this case is always 100% full, probably an argument that maybe the market could use some more climate control.
Yeah.
Huh. Right. But it's very case by case. Yeah. You have to do a market analysis on each facility and each market and make that determination. Did a blanket answer to your question? No, it doesn't usually. It doesn't usually pencil to just convert. That's not my first thought.
Right. There's this company. I'd say they're institutional. You would probably heard of it. Deal Point Merrill. There's I think they're institutional players. They're all across the country. They have a very specific, and I've been trying to help them identify. What they do is they identify big box, empty, vacant, old Stop and Shops, old Big Ys, old Walmarts, big box retail, right? Good visibility.
Sears, Kmart, yeah.
Yeah, you got to have, it's got to be vacant or ability to become vacant. A population of at least 50,000 within a 3-mile radius and 100,000 population within a 5-mile radius. And the box needs to be, again, big box, needs to be 50,000 square feet or more. And what they're doing is converting these big old shopping centers into indoor self-storage, like your Cube Marts, your Life Marts, and all that. Are you doing something? Have you done something like that? And what is your criteria for a radius or a demographic? Like, what is your ideal market?
We would absolutely do something like that. In fact, I know we have a gentleman who works with us to identify site locations for developing pro storage facilities. Outside of Augusta, Georgia, he just took an old Kmart, converted most of the inside to climate control storage. And by the way, it's already climate control, right? All he's doing is adding storage because it was a Kmart, so it was climate control.
Exactly. Yep.
And then he's using the parking lot for boat and RV parking storage. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do. This is what we tell people in Storage Moguls.ai, in our community, in our platform. You need to learn self-storage. Once you do, all of the other verticals open up, including converting big boxes like this. But all I would do there, my approach there is, what's the opportunity? Great, you found me 50,000 or 100. Those things are usually 100,000 square feet. But you find some big box like this, right? That's interesting. If you presented that to me, I'd say, okay, great, we'll look at it. Well, what's the first thing I'm going to look at? I'm going to look at the market. Is it undersupplied or oversupplied with just storage in general? How about boat and RV? How about pro storage, which is more business storage, so bigger units for businesses, right? Higher ceilings, you can drive trucks right into them. Still looks like storage and acts like storage, but it's just more for the B2B. If a 2-bedroom apartment in self-storage is the 10 by 10. 2-bedroom apartment is the most common unit size for multifamily, right? The most common unit size in self-storage is the 10 by 10. That's 100 square feet. It's got an 8-foot ceiling, 7.5-foot roll-up door. Our smallest unit size in pro storage is 450 square feet, up to 1,000 or even 1,500 square feet. So
right.
I just want to, and the ceilings are 16 feet. You can drive an RV into it. You can drive a truck with ladders on top. Just want to physically describe the difference between self-storage and pro storage. So I'm going to look at the market and say, how much self-storage is there? How much pro storage? How much boat and RV storage? What does this market need, and what can I do with this big box? And then from there, does it pencil? Is it undersupplied in self-storage by, this market needs 50,000 square feet, and we have a supply index ratio we use to calculate that. We might look at it and say this market could use another 50,000 square feet of self-storage, some of which should be climate control, or in this case, it's already. So who cares? I don't have to build it. It's already built. It's climate. I just have to add the storage. So what do you do if it's a 100,000 square foot box? What do I do with the other 50,000 square feet? Well, do I make 30,000 or 50,000 of it pro storage? I've got the ceiling height in that big box. So I can do anything in there because I got the ceiling height and I got the climate, right? And then from there, what do I do with the parking lot? So to me, when you learn the self-storage business, when you learn how to source, evaluate, underwrite, negotiate, and close it, and that's what we teach people to do, I'm agnostic as to what I'm not a climate control only self-storage guy. What is the defense giving me? If you want to use a football term, right?
Yeah.
What is the market providing me as an opportunity? The market is saying it doesn't need any more self-storage, but it sure could use pro storage and boat and RV parking. Well, then that's what I'm going to do with this big box.
Yep.
And I'm going to run my numbers based on that. And if it pencils, I'm going to make the offer, close the deal, and go, convert it.
I love it. You're not just a one-stop shop. You can pivot depending what the market says you need, take the same.
And at the end of the day, we are almost always 90% of the time, self-storage, pro storage, industrial, outdoor storage, boat and RV storage, small bay flex. 90% of the time, what is the land zoned? Light industrial. Mm-hmm. So if you learn how to do what we do, and self-storage being the most, I hate to use this word complicated because it's not complicated. It's just there's slightly more moving parts. And if you learn self-storage, everything else I just said is just a closely related cousin of it. You can easily learn the rest of it. So if you learn how to buy self-storage and source, evaluate, underwrite, the whole start to finish, the rest of it just comes naturally. Now you can look at any piece of light industrial dirt, whether there's a building on it or not, and say, and here's the market. We teach you how to evaluate the market, what it needs, doesn't need. Then you go to town. And a lot of times it's, nope, hard pass. We do more passing than we do buying.
But that's how
we buy 1% of the deals we look at.
Yeah. You'll save more money by passing on a deal and being educated because you know to pass on it versus, this could work, not being educated enough. And then you come to, and you lose money, it's no one's in the business to lose money. So like you said, education and knowledge is power.
The hardest part of what we do as educators and mentors to people looking to get in this business is telling them no, because they all fall in love with the first deal, and 9 times out of 10, it's not a good deal. So the hardest part is us saying, no, this is not a good deal. Trust us. I try to tell people you're buying storage facilities like you're bowling with bumper rails. Mm-hmm. We're not going to let the ball. You're going to do the work. You're going to bowl the ball. We're just going to keep that ball out of the gutter for you. But if you trust us, you just have to listen to us.
Love it. Before I forget, one of the questions I ask all of our guests is, how does your day-to-day look? Walk me through the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. Obviously, you're a very successful entrepreneur. I'd love to hear if you're reading any good books, you listen to other good podcasts. What do you do that makes you successful? And walk me through a day in the life of Joe.
Man, no 2 days are the same. And I am a terrible person to ask this to because I'm admittedly wearing too many hats. I have 2 podcasts. One is about storage. One is about AI for entrepreneurs. That's called Successful Idiots. And then I have my Storage Moguls podcast. Podcasts I listen to. I try to dabble in industry podcasts, commercial real estate, But my absolute favorite, just like it helps me with certainly with being a visionary and a CEO, but it's also just incredibly entertaining, is a podcast called Acquired. Have you ever heard that?
Mm-hmm. I have
love
not.
that podcast. Oh, I love it. This gives you the history of companies.
I'm going to write it down though.
Coca-Cola, Trader Joe's, Costco, Google AI, Facebook, there's Formula One. These are some of the ones I've listened to. Yeah. Fascinating. And these two guys that are the hosts are just incredible to listen to. They're really smart. I can't say enough about that podcast. It's called Acquired. Okay. Books, anything Dr. Benjamin Hardy's writing, Who Not How, 10X is Better Than 2X.
Yeah.
Be Your Future Self Now. What's the one I'm telling a lot of people to listen to? What is his name? Cunningham. Drawing a blank on the spot here. I apologize. The Road Less Stupid is what it's called.
Oh yeah.
Keith Cunningham. There you go. Mm-hmm. That's a great one. Any entrepreneur should listen to. But yeah, just all those types of, not self-help, but entrepreneurial type of books. I soak them up. The book I'm actually in the middle of right now is We Are As Gods by Peter Diamese, about AI and how powerful it is and where this is all headed. It's eye-opening.
Probably a little scary too.
Maybe some will find it scary. I don't know. For me, it's just we have to change the way we think, and AI is doing that. And I don't think enough people are on board yet. But a lot of people are having mental blocks, and it's really just we need to start looking at things differently because of the power that AI brings to us. Not necessarily in a scary way. Some of it we need to accept that life is going to change. There's paradigm shifts big time happening right now, and I'm not a doom and gloomer. We all need to get behind this and learn how to use this and adopt it. And because there's going to be a lot of solopreneurs, people are going to focus. Will there be less people working for Fortune 500, for instance, or big companies? 100% there will. So you can look at that as doom and gloom, like, oh, the AI is taking jobs. It's taking those jobs, but it's creating opportunities too. And there's going to be a world full of solopreneurs that have never lived better lives and have never been happier, that they're not working for 9 to 5s. And I don't think enough people are talking about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Joe, it was a wealth of information today. Thank you so much for coming on the show. If people want to learn more about you, where can they find you? And we'll link everything in the show notes. But just for those listening right now, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate you having me, and I appreciate what you're doing. I didn't have podcasts to listen to when I was trying to make it and break my way into the entrepreneurial world. So it's I know it's hard what you're doing, and your listeners should be very grateful.
Appreciate it.
I can be reached at joe@storagemoguls.ai, or you just go to storagemoguls.ai and you can register, check out the platform there, and it's free. No one asks for a credit card.
Perfect. Yeah, awesome. And again, we'll link your education platform. We'll link it in the show notes. So if people want to learn more about that, I know I do. So I'll be checking that out. Can always catch up afterwards. But thank you again. For all those listening, be sure to like and subscribe. So especially if you like what you heard today with Joe, we come out with 2 podcasts every month. Nothing too crazy. Try to keep it to about 30 minutes. So Sky's the Limit, real estate investing podcast, Apple, Spotify. So Joe, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for having me.
See you. Thank you for watching Sky's the Limit. We're always releasing new real estate content. So if there's something you want to hear, be sure to leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.